Hello and welcome to this webinar about family group conferencing, what it is and how you become a facilitator. Firstly, before I get any further, I'd like to acknowledge to you that I'm coming to you from the lands of the Gunai people and pay my respects to any elders past, present or emerging that are with us or watching this recording. And it's particularly relevant with family group conferencing to be aware of the wisdom and the family support that Indigenous people have shared with us, because it's a really important foundation of this whole process. Our agenda for today, and I'll be handing over to Eve momentarily. I'm Joanne Law, Director of Mediation Institute, and Eve has partnered with us to provide this training in family group conferencing. She's a very experienced facilitator and trainer who has developed the course with us. What we have planned for today is to firstly make sure we're all on the same page. Is what is family group conferencing? Where did it come from? A little bit about where it's used, and for those that are interested, how do you become a family group conference facilitator? And as I said, we'll have room for questions, so pop them in the chat as you go, and we'll also bring them up as we go through. Eve, over to you. Or did you want to say more about who you are?
It doesn't matter so much about me, I think, but yeah, I'm definitely passionate about family group conferencing as a model of alternative dispute resolution, because I come from a background of working in family preservation work, and I really felt that family group conferencing was a way for families to be very empowered, and that I think most of us know that when families and people make decisions for themselves, they're much more likely to see them through, and they're going to be much more likely a benefit for them, their family. And because we often don't know everything, even if we feel we have a very good connection with families, there's often a lot that, of course, we still don't know. And we don't know all the dynamics. And family group conferencing is really about acknowledging that when we isolate, I guess, one person or one part of the family unit, we may not be looking at all the different impacts. And I mean, I'm going a little bit off the slides, Joanne. That's what I do.
Feel free.
I get very excited once I started, because I've seen the outcomes firsthand. I was part of the pilot program, I think it's over 10 years ago now, across regional Australia. And it's really exciting to see it in the stages now that has become part of legislation, that we're seeing court magistrates asking for family group conferences to be done if they haven't. And we're seeing within Child Protective Services making sure that family group conference becomes an embedded part of the work that they do. So if you're not sure what family group conferencing is, it is a form of alternative dispute resolution. And it is a way that families can lead and be significantly part of the decision-making process that needs to happen for their family and their children. I'm going to talk mostly today from a perspective of keeping children safe, because that's really why the model was developed in the beginning in New Zealand, because there was the Maori Indigenous culture there had major concerns for the children that were being removed from their communities, and they wanted to be able to have families be part of that decision making to ensure that community became part of that circle of safety, and that community and culture and connection to that was at the paramount of that. And by involving extended family members, not just specifically the parents, for example, that there was a more collective decision and support network that was able to be built and created. So we saw it starting in New Zealand, and then it came to Australia really not long after. So we adopted that quite quick. And as I said, I was one of the people that was part of that pilot program. And I think there was a lot of probably paperwork, frameworks and embedding that needed to be done. So we saw it at a bit of a lull there and not really anybody using it. But I saw the outcomes of the model and how families felt about it, that they felt and reported that they felt very included. And I could see it was also bridging a gap between workers and family members. And for the first time, they were coming together and making decisions as part of a circle, and families were being able to lead that. And families were feeling empowered, so they were building better connections with the services and workers that were involved in their family's life as well. So I was like, okay, there's no one really using it right now. There's no programs. Why is that? We've done a pilot program. Well, I'm going to keep making sure I do. So I continued to do it with the local office. And then I thought, you know what, I can't do this alone. We need more people trained. So I started to share the model and train other people. And then I was contacted and a panel of providers was released. And I thought, yes, this is great. There's going to be so many more facilitators that are going to come into this model. And for me, that was really important to see. So I'm loving the rollout of it. I'm loving to see that it's really being used and embedded. So if we have a look at the big picture of family group conferencing, it is that there is some non-negotiables or bottom lines. They're actually called bottom lines in family group conferencing. Sorry, I have picked up a cough. No. Sorry if everyone can be patient. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I know lots of people have had this go around. So with family group conferencing, there's a case that's allocated. It's identified as a case for family group conferencing. And then as facilitators, Joanne, I'll have to pass it over to you.
Absolutely. So just hang on. So as Eve was saying, generally, particularly if we're talking in child protection, out of home care or other welfare type intervention, there's usually a case manager, someone who's going to allocate it. And Eve will talk a little bit more about the model in New South Wales once she regains her voice. After that, there's a preparation meeting. So there's a lot of preparation. The facilitator will normally meet with the various family members. They start with the central family members and ask them who the family is. So it's not about the case manager. Often they don't know who are the important people in the family. And so in that regard, it's very inclusive because it helps to bring, I suppose, the knowledge the family has about themselves is central, as it should be. So after that process has happened, and Eve can talk a little bit about some of the modifications that have happened during COVID, where the traditional model of the facilitator going and meeting everyone has had to be adjusted a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about what happens actually at the conference soon. But they bring the family together, usually including the child or young person, to discuss their needs and plan. I'm a family dispute resolution practitioner, and we say we do child inclusive practices, but we don't because the child's never there. We might have someone who's met with the child and comes in, but in family group conferencing, unless there's a particular vulnerability and a reason, not the child or young person will be there. And if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat because Eva will be able to go into that a bit more. And then what should happen is a plan review. So once they've put together a plan, there's a period of time to be running it, making sure it's working, and in an ideal model, the facilitator will bring people back together just to see how things are going, help them to talk about any updates or whatever. I've got a couple of notes there about the outsiders not remaining in the room, and by the outsiders we mean the professionals who are there, and also the facilitator isn't, as in most mediations, we're heavily facilitating the process, and with FGC it's a bit different. Eve,
I will do my best to keep going. Thank you, Joanne. I may need you to jump back in.
No problems.
Thanks. Yeah, look, you described it really well. I think pretty immediately when you first meet with a family, they start to understand how different family group conferencing is. And that's usually because they get to make a plan with no workers present. So when they find this out, they understand that this is a different process. It's a process that honours them going into this family private time, and they have a set of questions that they develop this plan around, and then they present this plan back to everybody. It's very rare for service workers or the referring caseworker to have any major issues with the plan that they develop. That's because there's that discussion time beforehand in the family group conference. For the first time, often everybody's in the room at the same time and they're hearing the same thing. So there's not as much miscommunication. Often there's some family members that have no contact with referring caseworkers before, but they might be a grandparent, an aunt that plays a very significant role in the child's life. So they're not hearing all the information firsthand and they're not understanding things. So when we have them all together and they have this discussion time and they have a time to ask questions, they have a time to offer how they can support each other, what they can do to support the young person and child. And then they get to have that private time, which is often about 2 hours that they actually do that. And as a facilitator, you're not even in the room. And I find sometimes this is the most daunting thing for someone when they become a family group conference facilitator. They often think, how is that even possible that I'm not there to support this process? So often when we do the training, I talk a lot about our own needs and our own belief systems and how some of those needs to be put to the side so that we can have some beliefs around really some hope for families, that they're able to come together and they're able to create these plans. And it's really the values and the practices that we need to have so that families can succeed. I'll get you to explain this one, Joanne.
So I just flicked back over to this one just to give people an overview of the process. So as Eve was explaining, that first stage, the workers, if there's maybe truancy involved and maybe someone from the school and all sorts of people might be there, there's sharing of information. And then a really important part of the process, which is the meal break, where everyone has something to eat together. Those from various cultural backgrounds will understand how important eating together is in many cultures, and really for everyone. It removes some of those boundaries in sharing a cup of tea and whatever else.
I often find that in that meal break time, some families that have said to me, there's no way you're going to get us all in a room together. You know, they may have had major conflicts down the street if they see each other. You know, there's been so many things that have happened, but they come together, they share information, they be really respectful. And that's because you as a facilitator has spent so much time in preparation. I think we all know that in any form of mediation, preparation is the key, but it's even more so in family group conferencing because you're bringing so many different dynamics and people into the one space to come up with an agreement. So when you do that preparation work really well, the information sharing it's at such a respectful time. And then the meal break, I see people connect that haven't connected in a really long time. And that's a really beautiful thing to watch. And these are some of the magical moments that I think family group conferencing brings that other practices just don't have the space to be able to bring those. And then the family time, again, that's a really different approach to what we're used to as well. Do have a set of questions. And so they do have something to guide them. And then we all come back together to validate that plan.
With the plan validation, often there may be some bottom line considerations that the case manager or caseworker has put in as part of the framework. So there'll be, some talk around that and future planning. But ultimately, that's the process that you learn and will facilitate. Now, I did skip past a slide and I do want to go back to that. And it's really around the voice of the child or young person. Now, we're signatories to conventions. It's meant to be embedded in our legal system and it is done to an extent, but perhaps not to the extent that you would see in family group conferencing. And part of that is the right to be consulted about who they regard as their family and decisions being made about them. The facilitator will meet with the child and talk about these sorts of things. However, there still needs to be a decision made about whether it's safe and appropriate for them. You've shared with me often a child might have their cousin or some close friend who's there and supporting them. And when she gets her voice back, I'm sure Eve will share a little bit more about that as well. I've got a little video here that I was going to share, and I think we've got enough time. I might just pull it up on YouTube and share that just to be a little bit safer. But were you hearing the sound?
How do people feel about involving young people? I'm really curious to know, if you could put it in the chat, what your thoughts are and what comes up for you when we talk about having children and young people at a family group conference.
I think it's a great idea, Eve. It's a great idea. It's the course that I've been wanting to do. If I wasn't studying an MBA right now, I would have done it. So this is why I can't study too much, but definitely keen to do, because I get almost every second client would have teenage children, and this is their time to be heard. It's a great opportunity for me as well and for them.
Absolutely. So we're talking about it from a child protection perspective, but it's really starting to be used in other areas now. And I can see that it's an invaluable practice to be used in aged care, in drug and alcohol, in working with young people. There's so many different uses that it could be used. And I am really excited and would love to see it used much more in aged care, I think. Also in disability service.
And I'd really like to see it in family dispute resolution. Yes. I will play this. It'll give you a little bit more insight.
I'm Nina, and I'm 12. My mom and dad are divorced. They argue over everything, and especially about me. Dad has got a new family now, and never has time for me. Not even to take me to football practice. And I have to sleep on the couch because I don't have my own room. So Mom is very mad at Dad, and they always fight when they meet up. Even though I like it best at Mom's place, I have to stay at Dad's when she's ill. Her sickness makes her mood go very up and down, and sometimes she even has to go to hospital. It's not fun to be late all the time. Even though my teacher is nice. Because my stomach hurts all the time, I forget things. And sometimes even my homework. Eventually, my school contacted the child services. Anita from the Child Welfare Services was going to be looking after my case, and she suggested that me and my family hold a family group conference. Family group conference means that me and my family and other grown-ups I know well will meet up. Then everyone talks about how they can help me. The nice thing is that I'm allowed to decide what we should talk about. These are the questions that me, Mom, and Anita agreed upon. 1. How can it be better for me at school? 2. Who can take me to football? 3. How can it be nicer for me at Dad's? 4. How can it be nicer for me at Mom's? The only thing missing was a question about how I can get to spend more time with Coco. Anita thought that was a good question. Gunnar, who is our coordinator, will help me ask everyone if they want to come to the meeting. I think it's good that I get to say in who can come to my family group conference. This is what we decided. Dad, well, because he's Dad. Gunnar thinks that Jorunn, Dad's new girlfriend, should come. Jonas, Arvid, and Maya are not allowed to come. They are Jorun's children, and this is my family group conference, so now I want to have Dad for myself. Uncle Truls, he doesn't like Mom much, but I know he likes me, so he can come. Helga is Truls' daughter. She has given me lots of her old clothes, and she is 17. She can come. My grandmother lives abroad, so she can't come. But Nana can. I chose Mona, Mom's friend, to be my support person because she knows me really well. She will help me before and during the family group conference. My teacher is also coming so he can explain how things are for me at school. And of course, Coco. Even though she can't talk, she will be there as my best friend. I'm a bit nervous about the family group conference. What if everyone argues and no one wants to come? I had butterflies in my stomach the day of the family group conference. It was strange to sit there, but it was nice that so many turned out.
Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to see that so many people could make it to Mina's family group conference.
My teacher and the child services explained what they thought would be best for me. Then the family group conference began, and no one argued. Uncle Truls wrote down what we decided. This is what we agreed upon. I can walk to school on my own, but if I need some help, Nana will come and take me to school. Jacob will visit me once a week and help me with my homework. Daddy or Uncle Truls will take me to football practice. Jordan said that I can visit her and Dad and Coco whenever I feel like it, even if it wasn't planned. Dad will build me my own room so I don't have to share anymore. If Mom is ill or has to go to hospital, I will stay with Dad. Mom will let Dad know if she is ill. And best of all, Coco will come and stay with me and Mom during the weekends. Mom and Dad agrees and they have both said yes. I only have to make sure Coco gets her walk in the morning and in the evening. We are going to have another family group conference soon. And before that, there will be meetings with the child welfare services. I can go along if I want to. The family group conference was actually quite nice. Coco thought so too. Things are much better at school now that Mom and Dad don't have so much to argue about. And I can be with Coco as much as I want. I actually look forward to the next family group conference, and so does Coco.
I really like that video. I think it's a great example. I just always think, Dad has to build half of the house.
Dad has to make a new room.
So that's a great question. Yes, it is definitely a choice. This is something that we talk a lot about in the training because I don't know how deep I should go into this right now, probably not too deep, but yes, it is a choice. I guess the thing is that often we like to think that people have choices and often they're offered a family group conference and sometimes they feel as though when they're offered things, if they don't do things, then the consequences of those are not so great. Therefore, they don't feel like they're really making an informed decision for themselves. I'm always really wary of that, I guess. And I really want to make sure that they do make a very strong informed decision. So we want to go into that, really addressing that with them. However, often they make a choice based on what they don't know what family group conferencing is. So they agree to it, but they're not really that happy about it because they feel like, and they often say, it's just another process, but yeah, I'll do it to tick another box. And that's how often they feel when we do go to them. Now, I always say in the training, let's understand where that's coming from, but also let's share with them why it's different and what are the benefits of a family group conference, because when they understand that, then they can make a really informed decision. Then they can make a decision that's, do they want to be part of it or not? And if they don't, absolutely, they do not need to be part of one. But I find when they're super informed, it changes their thoughts on how they want to participate. They often want to show up from a place of actually really wanting to do with them, as opposed to this is something else I just feel like I have to do. And that's the place that we want them at. And if they're not at that place, then we can go, this is not really an informed yes. So a family group conference isn't going to work, and we're not here to push people to do anything.
No, that's excellent. And I think there are some other comments in there as well, Tracy, about it needing to be managed appropriately with trained professionals.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And people that come into the training, you usually always bring certain skills. And then I always say, until you develop and build different skills, particularly in working with children, it might be that, and also for the purpose of not over interview a child, I guess, if they are working with someone, I'll always go to that person first. You know, they may have a long relationship with the school counsellor and feel really comfortable. They don't need to meet a stranger like me. Let's say they're 7 years old and we may not have them at the conference. It may be that you meet them, but in a less formal way. But then if there's some deeper things that you really want shared with them, let that person that is really well trained with children work with that person. In terms of having them in the family group conference, I guess also what we have, it is in the prep work. So it is in the preparation of everybody understanding there's going to be children present, and these are the conversations that we need to have with everyone. We need to have some safety things put in place for that. So they're all the things that we talk about in the training, is how can we make sure that the young child and young person is as safe as possible in that, and that it's a space where they feel comfortable and safe. There's lots of different ways, obviously, that we do that. But in terms of us choosing whether a young person should be there or not, we always, I always start with talking with the referring caseworkers that know the child and family and the family members themselves. I'll always say, how do you think the young person's going to respond in coming to the conference? How do you think they're going to manage? What do you think is going to be some of the challenges? So you're talking with the parents and the different family members that know that child. So we're doing a lot of work around that in preparing family members and their young person. And absolutely, this is why we go through this in the training. But because we're not there in any capacity to be a counsellor as such, a therapist, we really take those hats off and we come in as a mediator. So we really need to come from that place. So we don't go down the track of doing any counselling or anything with the children. We're always referring them to the right places. We always have the right supports at the conference where needed.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's really important with anything we do as mediators not to blow the boundaries of our roles. And, you know, definitely identify the need, but get the right person to help. Helen also mentioned about she often mediates in schools and finding that kids tend to find, or young people tend to find mediation a really good process.
I replied to her there saying, I remember when I was in school myself that often they did that a lot, and that it was a process that a lot of young people really did like, including myself. I do find I always go in really not pushy with young people. Sometimes, especially if they're in that teenage age, straight away they may feel like, whoa, I don't want to sit around with my family and talk about things. And so I just hear that. I don't take that as a closed no. I just say, you know, sit on it, think about it, here's some thoughts, you know, we'll chat again later in the week or next week and see how you're feeling about it. Talk to somebody about it, talk to your family, talk to your youth worker, and I'll encourage them to do those things so that they have some time, and I'll help them to understand why they're important to be there. I do find that they often like that. They often like to hear how important it is that we hear their voice, and you can really see those non-verbal cues around it when you talk to them about that. And I often find parents actually do like their children and young people to be there. They often feel like their voice is not heard as well, and so I do find that they do like it when they come as well.
Absolutely. Now, I'll just tell we'll tell you a little bit about the training that we offer. So the Family Group Conference Certificate Training, it's an online course for the theory side of things. And then Eve does 3 half-day workshop sessions. And we've got our next ones coming up. We used to do them as a 2-day face-to-face before COVID. we changed. And actually, I did mention while you were off busily coughing, Eve, about some of the modifications that have happened with COVID. In the workshop, it's really a lot of discussion about the model. So what we prefer is that people enrol in the course, go through the theory so that you've got a really good base, and then you can make the most out of the discussions with Eve and the other there. And then we do some simulations, including on the last day a simulation of a conference with people swapping in and out of roles. It's a bit chaotic, but it's a little bit of fun.
I think the goal that we created and developed this course around is you have the online material that you can go through, but when you come into the workshops, there's a main goal that I have, and that is that you experience everything from the very beginning to the end. So that goes for, I'll share information of each step and stage that you would do, and then you'll do an activity with that, and you'll do a little role play around that. So you feel like you walk away with understanding the steps that you would need to take as a facilitator when you finish. So if it's a referral meeting with the caseworker, you're going to practice that. You're going to have an activity around that, so whatever that is. And then, like Joanne said, we do the big simulation at the end, which is quite fun. Everyone gets into character. But yeah, and the other goal that I have during those workshops is that I get to share my examples, which is, I don't even know how many conferences I've done, but it's definitely a lot. It's definitely over 50 and maybe close up to 100. So I like to share the different experiences that I've had, like real life ones, with you, so that you really understand how that might look.
As far as cost, the whole course is $1,320 for general public, $1,188 for Mediation Institute members. People who are already certified but are looking for professional development can come back and do the workshop again, or if you've trained somewhere else and feel like you'd like to benefit a bit from some of Eve's experience, it's $495 and membership. Now, we talked about a certificate. A lot of the contract work for family group conference facilitators is in New South Wales from the Department of
DCJ.
They have a panel and they recognise the training for that panel. Now, that's all we had on our presentation, so we can come back to discussions and any further questions people have got. So in other states, it varies. There are some contracts out with some of the community, I think Aboriginal community controlled organisations in Queensland are doing it. I think there's some use in schools as well, and burgeoning use in family dispute resolution. Well, I mean, that family was definitely a family dispute resolution type family in that example.
Yeah, I think it's a model and a skill that you could use, like I said, in various areas. If you're working in schools, for example, it's a great model to be able to implement there. If you're working at a youth centre, if you're working at a family centre and you want to embed it in your practice. There's also a lot of foster care agencies that I've done a lot of work for, so they're often looking and contacting as well to be able to use family group conferencing.
Yeah. Now, in Victoria, they're running a pilot, but they are doing their own internal training for child welfare. So have a look at that if you're looking for a full-time role, because they're, rather than contracting, they're employing people.
And that's what they did in the beginning in New South Wales. So they didn't employ people they did actually have some people just for that, but they were allowing caseworkers to actually do it before they moved it out to the model of getting someone independent in, which is, in my opinion, much better, much more independent.
Yeah, I had some conversations about that, but that's what they're doing it because sometimes they don't trust the department, and so someone who's employed by the department may not get that level of trust. But anyway, perhaps it will.
Yeah. I think the question is, where do they hold it?
Yeah.
So this is one of the first decisions that often gets made by the family, is we ask them where they would like to have it. It might be that it's at a local family centre. It can be anywhere really. The DCJ do pay for the room. and we work that out with the family.
When you finish coughing, Eve. With COVID, there have been conferences continuing, and some of them were done online, and they're starting to bring in sometimes family members that need to be there that would come in online as well with the rest in the room. We haven't got the dates for the next course yet, Judith. It'll probably be in about a couple of months. We usually put them about 2 to 3 months apart. So we definitely will have another one before the end of the year.
Yeah, it's probably likely to be around August.
Any more questions? Because we won't keep poor Eve here longer than we need to.
Sorry, everyone. Thank you for being patient with me today.
Absolutely.
I'll see if I can get it out in terms of the online. So I've done a lot of onlines during COVID, and it's definitely something that you can still go ahead and do. And I found it to actually work much better than I originally thought when I was doing face-to-face. So
we had conversations, and Eve said, "Oh, I don't think you could do that."
And we were forced upon, and it works. It definitely works well. There's extra complexities that go with it and different types of preparation. And that's something that we talk about in the course as well.
Excellent. Oh, and thank you, Nicole. That's, conference venues. Any other questions or comments? Now's your opportunity. Nicole? Welcome.
Sorry, team. I was just coming off mute. I was kind of multitasking as well. I just wanted to say, Joanna, thank you for this group. I am with DCJ, but I'm also an accredited mediator and currently almost finished my FDRP.
Excellent.
So I follow this group and the wealth of knowledge probably with everybody online is just amazing, and the support. So a big thank you, and a big thanks to Eve as well. I've connected, and she knows my passion in this area, and it does work for kids and families.
Yeah,
it's a really good alternative to kids entering care. So for everyone on the line, I would jump on that training. If you can jump on, I would do it. I will definitely, Eve, try and get in for August. But yeah, big thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
and
Nicole.
We really do. We agree with you. It's a really, really important process, and we're hoping to see it eventually adopted all around the country. So any other questions or comments? No, we're all good. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time and for coming today and finding more about this, and let people know about the process if you can, and hopefully we'll see some of you at the training in June. Okay, take care, everyone. Thank you for your patience if you got all the way to the end with this very choppy editing. Poor Eve was really struggling with coughing during this webinar. So I've done a little bit of post-production, including putting in the August dates and so on. If you do have further questions, feel free to get in touch. If you go to our website, mediationinstitute.edu.au, that's probably the best way. There's a little chat box there. You can email or message. There's a phone number at the top. This is ideally for people who already have a base of experience working with families. It's not really a course designed for someone who's coming completely from, not having any sort of background in this type of work. If you're not quite sure, is this for me or not, please get in touch and we can have a chat. If you know that it is for you, you can click on the purchase page and enroll straight away. The course is very moderately priced considering it'd be paid for with one conference, but if your circumstances make it difficult to pay it in full up front, please get in touch and we can have a discussion about a payment plan.